Find more great shows or join the team at sport-social.co.uk.
Hello, welcome back to another special edition of the Masterclass is a player analysis show. And today we're going to be talking about Darwin Nunez. He has been in the press. A lot of English sides are chasing him. He scored 2 goals against Liverpool, which was fantastic. And I know Aaron, who's sitting with me today from Proxima Jornada, he is an Everton fan, so I'm sure he enjoyed that. He's a player, who's definitely got a high ceiling. And I think what we're going to do today, Aaron, is we are going to talk through the positives, some of his strengths, some of his weaknesses, how he'll fit into Ten Hag system with his official announcement very imminent. Before we do that, you guys will know Aaron's been on the show before. Brilliant knowledge on the Portuguese league, Portuguese players, and he's got a fantastic Twitter page called Proxima Jornada, which you should give a follow. So Aaron, welcome back, mate. Long time. How are you? And Nunez is the big name, isn't he, that everyone's talking about from the Premier Liga at the moment.
Yeah, it has been a long time. Yeah, things are going well. And yeah, he sort of exploded, to be honest. He performed well last season, more as a provider than a goal scorer. But this season, he's taken his goal scoring exploits to the next level. And that's what gets headlines. That's what gets attention. So we're seeing him linked with seemingly every club in Europe, even those that don't really need a striker. I think a lot of it is media clickbait, but definitely a talent and has the potential to be a top talent. Yeah, so there's no question that there's talent there.
Let's talk about the latest news first, because I think that's important, just to break down what's actually been said. We are recording this obviously before the transfer window, so things will pick up. But we've seen Newcastle very, very interested. Obviously, they've had the big takeover. They've got a lot of cash to play with. They bought really well. We've seen in the Premier League, Newcastle climbing up that table. We've seen Man United linked and Arsenal. I think United and Arsenal were going for very similar players in the summer just because they have similar needs. And, obviously there's Atletico Madrid as well. So what is the latest? Because you do find that United's name does get linked to a lot of players, doesn't it? It happens all the time. And, how legitimate is it that Man United interested? Obviously, David Ornstein has said it, and he's very, very well connected that he is on the list. So, yeah, where do you think he could be going in the summer? Will he leave? That's the other question. And where would you like to see him, or where do you expect him to see him?
I do think he'll leave. Where he'll go, I'm not too sure, because, as you said, at the minute, Man United seem to be the front runners. But then it all depends as well, as the announcement of Ten Hag hasn't happened yet. Whether, obviously looking towards the future, whether he sees him as a player to play in that sort of possession-based system. Arsenal have been linked, Newcastle have been linked, clubs across Europe have been linked as well. I think even Tottenham were linked recently, and I remember last season when he first sort of came onto the scene, West Ham were really, really closely linked with him, or meant to have been monitoring him, but they're sort of they've sort of disappeared a little bit. Whether they're still interested or there's something going on behind the scenes there, we don't know. But I think as soon as a player begins to start performing and scoring goals, it's only natural that, especially for a player playing in the Premier League, players from Portugal coming directly to the Premier League, especially in recent seasons, have had a fantastic hit rate, a success rate, especially when you compare it to sort of other leagues. We've saw players, come from Spain and haven't, struggled to adapt, or players even coming from the Eredivisie in Holland. Some of the players come and they look absolutely brilliant. Some of them, struggle a little bit more. With players from Portugal, they do tend to have more of a sort of that. There's less of a bedding in period. I'm not too sure what it is. I mean, Luis Diaz, as we can see at the minute, the Colombian who's obviously signed for Liverpool from Porto, who's hit the ground, running. The players that, arrived straight from Portugal to Wolves, the likes of Ruben Neves, who just completely, fit in wonderfully. And then there's the other players as well who obviously will then go to another league, say maybe the French league, or something like that. The likes of Bernardo Silva going from to Monaco and then moving to Manchester City. Same with Joao Cancelo going to Italy and playing for a couple of clubs there, and then coming from there to England. So do tend to have good success. Portugal like to scout players, especially from the South American countries, and Darwin Nunez is just another of those players who these rough diamonds that the Portuguese clubs are able to sort of polish and then sell on for a profit. So I do think he'll be on his way. Be very interesting to see where he goes, and obviously I think with this being predominantly Man United, we'll get into where he fits, or if he fits, what he could bring. Particularly to a Ten Hag system, will be very interesting to see how he does adapt if he does move.
Yeah, it's absolutely spot on. I was actually having that conversation with someone the other day that the hit rate from the Portuguese league is quite incredible. You mentioned a couple of players there, and then you do think about the Bundesliga. There's been quite a few players that have come from the Bundesliga who have actually struggled to adapt, and it kind of maybe dispels, the rumor or the view that maybe the Portuguese league isn't as strong as say other ones, because a lot of top talents are coming in and they're the best players in their teams. Bruno Fernandes obviously has done very well. Bernardo Silva, you mentioned. Joao Cancelo for me is up there with the best fullbacks, with Trent and Reece James in the league. It's just stunningly good players. So it's definitely a good point. I do want to talk now about the strengths and weaknesses, and there is a lack of quality for me, Aaron, in terms of quality strikers for me at the moment in Europe. I think it's very slim pickings. When you're looking at some of the top sides looking for them, you're looking at the top strikers at the minute. Karim Benzema is obviously, in his 30s, playing incredibly well. Ballon d'Or contender for me, if not the winner. Lewandowski is very, very good. Harry Kane's still performing. There is a gap for me in terms of ready-made strikers. You might look over at Italy and say maybe Victor Osimhen's a good player. Romelu Lukaku hasn't happened for him. Patrick Schick's a good player, poor injury record. Maybe Jonathan David at Lille. There's all these younger talents. There's no one that's really in that middle bracket where they're about to peak. So when you're looking around Europe, what do Man United do? Do they stick with maybe someone like, let's say, Cristiano Ronaldo? Do they supplement him with a younger talent like Nunez and they look to develop him? It's very, very difficult. So when I'm looking around Europe, I'm trying to think of players. And Nunez does stand out to me, and I like what I've seen. But I want you to break down the strengths and weaknesses, because I think it's very easy for United fans to go onto YouTube or to go on Twitter and see, oh, look, he scored a couple of goals. I'm pretty sure he scored a hat-trick the other night or a couple of goals the other night. Or he set up a few goals against Sporting, and you'll be able to correct me and the listeners on that. So, obviously there's a lot of buzz, but I think there can be legitimate concerns as well how he'd fit into possession-based side. So why don't you talk about the strengths first and tell us what he's really good at?
So the strengths, you see these strengths as soon as you see him play. He's one of those players where you don't have to watch him a lot to sort of see this is what he's good at, this is what he's bad at. It's abundantly clear immediately. That can be a good thing and also a bad thing. So first of all is his physical profile. He's tall. I think he stands there maybe just under 6'2", or maybe just over. I can't really remember what one it is, but he's a big lad, and especially when he's drifting off into sort of that left channel, he doesn't like to just stay in the box. He doesn't like to stay as like a number 9. He does play with another striker predominantly. I mean, last night it was Gonzalo Ramos. We've seen him play with Roman Yaramchuk. We've saw him play with Haris Severovic, or different strikers at Benfica. And we've even seen him play on the left-hand side of a 4-3-3 at times, especially early in the season under Jorge Jesus. So he's a tall player. He's strong. He likes to drift off into the channel because he knows he can use his physical strength to go shoulder to shoulder with opponents. He likes playing with a lot of space in behind. He likes to drive with the ball into space. He's quick. He's very quick. He's one of those players where when he almost starts moving, you can see him moving through the gears. And because he is tall, sometimes he can look a little bit cumbersome when he's running, but you don't be fooled by, sort of the way his running style. He's very powerful. He's very fast. And he will show quality in front of goal as well. I mean, he scored 25 league goals this season, and obviously people all have concerns, and outside the top 5 league tax or whatever people call it. But I mean, if it was easy to score 25 goals in the league, everyone would do it. But they don't. It's a difficult thing to do, and the season's not done yet. 6 appearances in the Champions League, 6 goals. Again, a goal a game in the Champions League. If it was easy, everyone would do it.
Two against Liverpool as well.
2 against look at the teams he scored against. He put 2 against Barcelona. They scored against Ajax. He scored, against Liverpool. So these are big teams that he scored against, and that was something that was always maybe held against them. Is that his appearance or lack of in big games. You mentioned the game against Sporting last night. He scored and provided an assist. Now, that was actually the first time he'd scored against Sporting since he's been in Portugal. And it was actually the first time he'd scored against a team in the top 2. So he's never scored against Porto in his 2 seasons there. And last night was the first time he'd scored against Sporting. So that sort of thing that was always held over him was that, well, he hasn't scored in those 3 teams, Benfica, Porto and Sporting, are the Os Tres Grandes, the big 3. And that was held over him. Like, he only scores against the teams in the bottom half of the table, and he scored last night against the defending champion. So he sort of, he hasn't completely shut people up, but that's it. It goes a little bit a way to do that. And I think he's I say when you're watching him. When you're watching him move through the gears, when he's holding off defenders and he's trying to drive himself into space, you can see he's a dangerous player and he is hard to stop, because someone like him who is capable of making intelligent runs, sometimes again can stray offside. Sometimes maybe a lack of concentration, but he does tend to have a good feeling for where the space is and moving into that space. When he's playing against the team who are playing quite high, that's why I think he's had relative success. Well, he's had success in the Champions League because Benfica go into those games knowing that they're going to have less possession. I think against Liverpool they had 30-something% possession. Against Ajax, 30-odd% possession. So, playing on the sort of the counter attack, getting someone like Rafa Silva on the ball, who's able to move through the gears quick and then release Darwin, and he can sort of run then and get a defender on the back foot. That's when he's incredibly dangerous and threatening. But then that also comes with, if he's not playing in that type of system, how would he do? Well, to be honest, we don't really know, because he's, at Benfica, teams do try and sit back in the Premier League, and he's able to sort of combat that well. But then moving to the Premier League or to a club like Man United, it's a completely different ball game. But I do think, while it's easy to discredit him at times, you do have to say he's improved his finishing like tremendously. Last season, he provided more assists than he scored goals, and his end product was something that was questioned a little bit. He was a little bit rash with his shooting and sometimes not picking the right pass, or passing when he should be shooting, or taking on shots when he had a better pass on, or if he does play the pass, there's not enough on it, or there's too much on it, and the weight isn't right, and frustrating things that let him down. This season he's became a lot more ruthless in terms of, if he's finding himself a yard and he gets himself in a good area, he will take on that shot and he'll take it on early. And his shooting is all. I said this recently to someone in an article. His actual shooting style is very similar to him as a player. It's almost like the two are intertwined, because the way he shoots, he puts all his power through the ball. Not, at times there's not a lot of flair with the shots. The finesse finishes. It's more powerful, direct. Shots that look like they're going to take a goalkeeper's hands off at times. And that's sort of like him as a player. Sometimes he doesn't look the most graceful, but he's very,
Raw
very effective.
Is a word that I always said the other day, but powerful, direct, strong, explosive. But Aaron, my question is, can that be refined? Because, he is 22. He is 6'2". He's a strong lad, and I think that is important in the Premier League. I think it is a physical league. Can that be refined by a coach? Let's say like Ten Hag, and we'll go more into Ten Hag's system. We'll compare him to Haller in a second. But can he be taught? Because technical security, technical fundamentals are very, very important, very early stage of your career. And while you can coach them, sometimes players have them, sometimes don't. Right? And there's some players that no matter how much you coach them and you train them, they're never going to be the best on the ball. Now, I'm not saying that's the case with Nunez, but is there maybe slight concerns that that area of his game cannot be developed, or is that just, like you said, we don't really know? But if he's given the chance to go to a club, let's say Man United, with a manager like Ten Hag, who has a huge emphasis on ball possession and his ball playing principles, that we could see him go to the next level and become a really, really top, well-rounded striker.
Again, it's hard to say. It's hard to sort of, if we had a crystal ball, I'm sure Man United would be able to look in and see him play 10, 15 games and then make a decision on him, but football doesn't work like that. So that's, I suppose, where these analysts come in and scouting comes in, and that's why transfers take so long to get over the line, because every single detail needs to be right. And as you mentioned before with Romelu Lukaku, you can know a player inside out, and sometimes for some reason it still just doesn't seem to work. That's football. So with him, it would be interesting to see possession-based football, him sort of dropping deep and getting involved in play, and sometimes can disrupt the rhythm a little bit, because if he comes short and then his return pass isn't great, it can break down the attack. It's not as if in a possession-based side, especially. I mean, you look to say, like, I don't know, the ones who do it best. So like Pep's team at like Barca, like those type of, like the real total football possession-based teams, they didn't even have a striker. It was Messi in the false nine. But sort of like coming deep and being able to be proficient with the ball and play these clever give and goes, and I suppose that's sort of what City are trying to do at the moment when they play with like a forward, or Bernardo Silva in a false nine, is because they don't feel that they've got an out-and-out striker who can do that role well. And you mentioned before, there seems to be this deficiency of strikers that can do it all at the moment, and that probably is true, especially among the younger strikers. So, can you see Darwin sort of emulating those players, who were able to really excel in a possession-based side? I don't know. You'd have to look and say, that probably doesn't suit his game, but it's all to do with development as well, because if you've got a good coach, there's nothing to say that he'd be unable to assimilate into that system. And especially if, he plays, I don't know what Ten Hag's predominant formation is. I know.
So 4-3-3, but it can also be a 4-2-3-1. So there's a lot of emphasis on the wide the wide players are usually inverted, and they sit up very, very wide, high up the pitch. The midfield three, there will be a number 10, and the midfield three is very interchangeable. And then the sort of, he used to play with Tadic as a false nine, but he's now gone with Haller, who's a bit more traditional. Link up play is important.
Yeah,
I'm actually going to bring it up now, Aaron, so you can have a look at the comparisons, and for the listeners, and obviously the ones listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, get yourself to YouTube and have a look, because we have actually just brought up Nunez's sort of statistics, and we're comparing them with Haller, and this is on FB Ref. So everything we've discussed today, really, I think what's impressive is his non-penalty goals. He's very high up in the 96th percentile in Europe. Haller's having a great season. You can see this here. He's topping in most categories. I think the interesting ones here, the pass completion is a bit of a concern. We look at Nunez; he's in the the 1 percentile, so he's in the bottom out of any striker in Europe.
Yeah, that's not great.
That's not great, is it? And passes attempted as well, 14th percentile. You look at Haller, pass completion 83rd. So there's a lot of emphasis for whoever's playing number 9 in Ten Hag's system to have good, ball security. And when you've got Bruno Fernandes in Man United's side, I think ball security, you've already got one player who can be quite erratic. It's important that your number 9 has that ball security as well. But what I really like here is the progressive carries. Like Nunez is one of the best in Europe up there, 86th percentile. Dribbles completed per, these are all per 90 as well, 85th percentile, and touches as well, 75th. So, Haller gets a lot of touches in the box, but in terms of carries and dribbles, he's very low, it's sort of in the bottom 25% and the 40%. And then what I like here as well is the tackles and the pressures. It shows he's aggressive. I think he can play in the pressing side, which is what he'll be expected to do. And that's what Man United are lacking. When you look at Ronaldo as well, Ronaldo's age comes into play as well. But look, he's 37. He can't really go and press aggressively, all game, twice a week. So when you're having a look at these, my question is that, we'll talk about how he fits into Ten Hag's system, but Are Benfica a side that do play more on the counter? Even in the Premier League, are they a side that does that? And obviously, are we just seeing these statistics just because that's the way they play? And look, obviously, if they were more possession based, you might see a better side, or is it actually the other way around where they do play a little bit more, they do dominate possession in their league, but Darwin does struggle a little bit in this aspect, and it is an area that he needs to refine or improve.
Yeah, I think a bit of both, to be honest. I mean, if you look at the progressive passes and sort of the pass completion and the passes attempted, it's not great. But then when you look at the progressive carries, that's probably more to do with one than the other. So what I mean by that is the reason why that's not like an even split where he's attempting as many passes as carries that he's attempting is because he'll know his strengths and he'll know what he's better at doing. So instead of maybe coming deep and trying to play, intricate 1-2s and try and move through the lines, he will just go and grab the ball and move and make his way up the pitch. That's why he's in the top, 86% for progressive carries. And that's because he can pick up the ball and make his way up the field, especially playing in sort of like a counter-attacking system. So like last night against Sporting, he did it a couple of times. Benfica didn't have a lot of possession there either, and obviously that's a Premier League game. But it's difficult to say as well because they've changed managers throughout the season. So the B team manager is now the first team manager in Nelson Verissimo. But then, who's to say what Darwin will be like next season under Schmidt, who's the current PSV manager, will be the Benfica manager in next season. But obviously Darwin probably won't be there, so we won't know. Is that so he likes to pick up the ball and sort of move into that space rather than play these little intricate 1-2s and perhaps he doesn't want to give the ball away sort of in those areas. It's probably why he doesn't try as many passes. I mean, if you had a 1%, you were in the bottom 1% for pass completion. You'd probably rather stick to your strengths, which is picking the ball up and moving through the gears with it. But again, it all depends sort of on the way that Benfica play. You asked in terms of, sort of how they play in the league. I mean, last season, just looking at last night, they had, I think it was 30 something percent possession against the teams at the bottom half of the table. Again, they pick up, they'll have a bit more of the ball, but they don't tend to, to completely dominate. And also, Benfica haven't had a good season in the Premier League. Let's not forget that. Like Darwin isn't playing in a team where Benfica are expecting to go out and completely roll over the opposition. That might have been the case, in the past couple of years when people think, Benfica, they were in the quarterfinals of the Champions League. He's playing in a really good side. They've got 67 points in the Premier League and Porto have got 82. I can't remember since following Portuguese football that the gulf between those two has been this big. And I've been following Portuguese football for a long, long time. So Benfica have had, a great season in the Champions League, and Darwin has definitely excelled. But the fact that he's, being able to score 25 league goals for a team that haven't done particularly well at times, have dropped points in important matches, is a testament to him as well. But again, as I say, you're looking at the statistics there in black and white. You can see even from this page of FB Ref, you can see what he's good at. You can see what he's bad at. And I don't like to just use stats because I think sometimes, the eye test can tell you things. Statistics are great to back up the points, but with these, I think, the proof is in the pudding there. Is the pass completion isn't great. His link-up play at times, isn't the best. His carrying is excellent. Touches in the attack and penalty area there, 6.16 per
off
90.
the ball as well. Pressures are really good. Tackles, yeah. So he's definitely someone. What I do want to say is, that when you look at his non-penalty goals and then you're looking at, the assists, and you mentioned obviously the season before that he was very creative. It's what's clear for me from looking, and I agree with you. You can't just look at stats in isolation. The eye test is extremely important. Stats are there to foundations to back up your points. When you do look at how his assists, it's obviously clear that he's been told, right, you are the striker, you got to score goals this season. So what I want you to do is pick up the ball, carry it, scare defenses, and and score goals and finish, and he's improved that side of his game a lot. And so, I mean, I remember when Haller was in the Premier League, and you remember it as well. He hardly tore up trees. Really, he wasn't great with his back to goal. Obviously, West Ham were a side that used him as target man, and he didn't really fit that. And obviously, Antonio then became the striker. But when I look at what Ten Hag's done to him, he's made him a completely different player. He's enhanced so many areas of his game. So you would hope, and this is what I'm sort of thinking with Darwin, you'd hope that with that sort of coaching and that time on the training pitch and that development, and he's still at such a young age at 22,
yeah,
striker, so young as a striker. Strikers, you're looking at the top strikers, as you mentioned earlier on the podcast, the Lewandowski's, the Benzema's, even Harry Kane. They're in their 30s. Harry Kane's just hit 30, so they peak a little bit later. So that's something to bear in mind. But the last point, Aaron, and sort of feel free to add anything as well. But what I do want to ask is player comparisons. We haven't mentioned Romelu Lukaku, and there has been that going around on Twitter. That there are similarities with Lukaku. Lukaku prefers to play, on the counter. Maybe his touch isn't as great, or his link up. Where do you see sort of comparisons? What players are similar to him? I mean, there's a lot of talk about Cavani, but I think that's got to do with obviously the look, the hairstyle, and obviously being Uruguayan as well. Yeah, I've seen people say Higuain as well, which was an interesting comparison as well. But yeah, which sort of players do you have similar comparisons? So I do see a touch of Cavani with him, but Cavani is also a very, very technically gifted footballer, someone that can play. He's very proficient with the ball at his feet, and in terms of link-up play as well. So I think it's maybe a bit early to say that, but I can definitely see that comparison.
Yeah, to be honest, I mean the comparisons, I think, especially when the people make comparisons as soon as they see that someone's from a particular country, that's all I saw straight away was like, oh, he's either going to be like Cavani or he's going to be like Suarez, but it's a lot more sort of complex than that. He's a bit more unique individual. To be honest, I when he was first linked with West Ham last season, the first thing I thought of was someone like Mikel Antonio. And what I mean by that is different players, and he's a lot more prolific than someone like Antonio is. But I mean, in terms of his ability to really like frighten a fullback, and for a striker, you think he's not a winger. He shouldn't really be going up against fullbacks. But when he does drift into those channels and then sort of makes those like diagonal runs into the box, we saw it in the goal against Barcelona. Against Liverpool, he did it a couple of times. He can really get out of fullback, which is, you think of a striker, a traditional number 9 waiting in the box for a cross. He's not that. And someone like Antonio, they're not like that. I think they're around like the similar heights as well. He's got pace to burn, especially playing on the counter attack. But yeah, I think I'm always wary about comparing players with others, because I think players have their own traits. They have their own, and when you compare it with a player that someone might not think, oh, they're not the greatest, and then straight away they look at it as a negative. But you can be a more refined version of a player, or you can be a more sort of unpolished version. And I do think he's got a lot to learn. He's got a long way to grow. At 22, it does give him hope, and it gives whoever it is to buy him hope that we might have this player, and we might have him for the next 5, 6, 7 years. This could grow into our striker, but he is still 22. He's had experience playing in the second division in La Liga 2, I think it was, with Almeria. Since then he's then played in Portugal, so he's sort of moving up, in terms of the quality of the league. And then obviously before that he was at Peñarol as well in Uruguay. So he sort of made that step from Uruguay and then to Spain and then to Portugal into the top flight. The next step will be a really, really important one, because you don't see him sidestepping. You don't see him going to a league that is sort of on a par with Portugal, somewhere like Holland or something like that. It's going to be probably to the Premier League, and then that's when we'll begin to see him, and how he adapts and how he adjusts. But what you were saying about Haller before, spot on as well, is that sometimes you can compare players, and you can have, this player plays like this, and that's the way they're going to play forever. And it's like everything's set in stone, and it's die cast. But again, football and footballers aren't like that. If you've got a coach there that's that obviously they can't work miracles, but if they think, there's something in there, I'll be able to use him in this way, and then all of a sudden you start to see a sort of different player, and you think, where's this player? I mean, how many players? Same with United, you might see a player who plays 5, 6, 7 games, and you think, why did we sign him? He's terrible. He can't control the football. Something changed. There's a tactical tweak. They might move. Even if they might only move to the other side of midfield, or they might move more advanced or more defensive, and you think, wow,
But Aaron, you think of Bernardo Silva, started on the right wing, obviously, and played further forward, and then he's played further forward again this season. But now you're seeing him play deep for Pep. And that shows that, and that's why system is king, right? System is so important, and this is why I think people get too wrapped up in sort of an archetypal player and how they are. Okay, he's a target man number 9. He's this, he's that. Nobody thought Haller would be one of the top strikers in Europe, in terms of his stats, and that's what you're saying.
Yeah, definitely, and you can see with certain players, they've you'll be able to do this, or you can move into this next stage of his career and move to this position. And I think, it was Newcastle, Joe Linton. Joe Linton now is playing as a midfielder, and Newcastle fans are going,
like a number 8.
It was a couple of months ago. They couldn't. They couldn't get rid of him fast enough, and then there's like these little changes and tweaks, and I mean, in his case, a positional change, and they're thinking, well, he's one of the first names on the team sheet. So football isn't always set in stone. It's just, you've got to be patient with players, and when someone like Darwin Nunez at 22, I like him as well. I feel like sometimes when I speak about him as well, I come across like I don't rate him all that highly. I do. I think there's a lot of talent there, and I think he's got a very, very high ceiling. I just think that if he's to go and play in the Premier League, I think system, you said then, system is king, system is key. If he can play, in a system that suits him. But we don't know how he'll adapt, really. We don't know. I mean, will he struggle? But if United wouldn't take a chance on him if they didn't think that they could do this sort of Sebastian Haller style, change and get him more involved, and not so much as just a focal point, but actually, getting involved in the play and, pressing. He's already sort of got that sort of pressing side down as well. So, and obviously this is the same manager that's worked with Haller, so he can see in that profile of player. So if they go for Darwin Nunez, then, that'll be on him as well. I'm sure United aren't going to, go ahead and try and sign someone that Ten Hag isn't fond of, because, that wouldn't be a great start to his managerial career at United. So, I mean, we'll see.
But look, Aaron, my sort of final word, and we'll wrap up here. Thank you so much for joining me. But what I will say is that if there is a manager that you want to develop you at a young age, I think Ten Hag is one of those managers. Obviously he's got a very good track record at Ajax, very, very good technical and tactical manager, and it's very interesting to see if Darwin does join. But look, Aaron, before we wrap up, where can all the fantastic listeners find your great work, and anything in the works as well, anything exciting that you want to share with the listeners?
So you can find our page, well, you can find our website at proxima-jornada.com. You can find us on Twitter at Proxima Jornada1. As a writer, I'm at Aaron Barton UK. You can also find me over at Opta, writing for the analyst on all things Portuguese football, using sort of like the latest statistics and stuff. So some fun pieces put together over the last couple of months over there. And the podcast should be coming back soon. We've been on a little bit of a hiatus at the moment, but hopefully get that back up and running. And we've also recently launched the Patreon as well. There's quite a few things there to check out.
Brilliant. What we'll do is we'll put all the links in the bio and below, in the description below. Make sure you give Aaron a follow. I've followed Aaron for quite a while now, and I always love to check your page out, because there's so much talent that you so much Portuguese talent that you obviously do reports on and analysis on. So make sure you check that out, guys. Thanks very much for joining me, guys. As always, give us a like. Hit the subscribe button. Give us a follow on Twitter and Instagram as well. Have a fantastic day, and we'll see you all next time.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.